All right, Genesis. The topic for today, short bit, will be about the creation myths. My main creation myth that I follow mainly, strategically, intrinsically, is Bible creation myth. I believe in it, I have faith in it, and such. But I also accept and believe in all creation myths because somehow, in what I'm rooted in explains how each myth correlate with one another, which is the Bible. The Genesis is the creation myth. So the beginning. So when I look into the beginning of the creation myth of how God created everything, and I correlate it with other creation myths, yeah, we all know that they sound the same. You know, they sound, they may not look the same or sound the same, but if you think about it, they are the same. Because to me, the topic is just basically creation. So to me, Genesis is simply what is that exists, existence of creation. And all the other myths concerning of like the Chinese creation myth or the Japanese creation myth or whatever. All of these other myths are the details. They're basically the main, not the main. They're not the Genesis is the meat, and the other creation myths are the details. How you create the meat, how you cook the meat, how you season it, how you sizzle it, how you like Gordon Ramsay style. But Genesis is the meat. It is what it is. Genesis is whatever kind of meat you like. However you want to see it. So if you see it like that, all these creation myths are a part or from the Bible. Everything comes from, which I believe is the source. And it could be vice versa. You could look at the Norse mythos, the Norse creation myth as the main one, the main source. And everything else starts to correlate if you study it. So let's go to where it says, I wrote some notes, just gonna keep this short. This is what I wrote. In Genesis, the creation in the beginning, I thought that each time God said let, which he does says, he says let, like for example, in Genesis 14, and God said, let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and so on. So when he says let, that means he is cause, meaning he is the reason. Now bringing the other gods, he is the reason the gods created their worlds, such as the Norse, the Chinese, the Japanese, the Hindu, and so on. Well, Hindu is kind of like similar. It's not really, but it does have his own. It has his own mythos. When God finally said, "Let us make humankind," this is what I believe. This is how I interpret it, and it could be. And I also accept other interpretations as well. But how I see it for myself personally, this is what I got from it. When God finally said, "Let us make humankind," this passage is describing how each creator God, okay, created their universe and humankind under God Himself in every realm within the mind of humans. So, and how God created Adam and Eve. Well, yeah, that explains how God created Adam and Eve. So, when God said, Let's see. Let us make humankind in our own image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So, God, when God said, let us, He is the reason why the gods exist, if that makes sense. Or He is the reason why God is just existence. He's everything, male, female, all that. Everything exists from this source, which we call God, right? And according to this theology, or this opinion, or whatever you may call it, God, I believe, once He said, let us, that caused all the other gods that He created to create their world. Let's say Odin, Vili, and Ve. When God said, let us, that's when Odin say, let's make human beings. Like, because if you think about it, like how do we think certain thoughts? Why we have certain thoughts? That's not intrusive, obviously, but thoughts, why we think a certain way, accordingly to a healthy mind and to a healthy body, why we move a certain way, is because of the existence of God. We do certain things because of God. And when we move out of that, which is a long story short, when we do not do the things, we have free will. We have free will. But when we move out of that free will, we become slaves to certain things that's not good. But that's a whole nother story. But when God said, let us, that's like saying He's the one that put the thought. Let's say He put the thought in Odin, Vili, and Ve, to create humans in the Norse mythos creation. They created, it sounds weird. I can understand, I don't know, I can hear it now. It's like, what? This is not making sense. But it's, I don't know how to explain it. The best way I can say it is that when Odin created the first humans, like Asgard and Embla, when Odin gave breath into them, into the logs, and then Vili gave will and thought, and Ve was, I'm probably confusing the other two, but basically will and thought and the appearance, when they do that, God is the uncreated motion within Odin, Vili, and Ve to do those things, if that makes sense. So I hope that makes sense. Like, because the Bible is literally just what it is. It's like basic. It's the most basic stuff ever. And all the other Norse mythos is the most creative, most beautiful. The Bible's beautiful, most beautiful and all that stuff too. But the other Norse, the Chinese, all of that stuff becomes the juice within the Bible, within the creation mythos, period. So using Norse, for example, that's how I took it when God said, let us. He's including His creation. He's including the gods. He's including everything and Himself. You know? He's including everything that He put out there to create these worlds. Because in the Bible, I remember reading somewhere when it says something about a kingdom. It's hard. I should not talk about that because I can't remember. But I remember reading it and it said a kingdom, something about a kingdom. Like we're going to do something when we pray or something regarding a kingdom. And when I questioned it, I was like, a kingdom? Instead of saying the kingdom, because in my mind at the time, I thought there's only one kingdom, which is God's. God's, as in G-O-D, prophecy S, which is the Lord's kingdom. And I said to myself, if that's worded as a kingdom, that means there are other kingdoms. That's what I said in my head. I don't know. We don't know. But why not think it? Why not explore? Because it makes sense in a way when you have a certain source in front of you. No matter, you don't have to have the Bible itself in front of you. You could have the Bible in a form of the Norse, anything that you follow. And that will tell you, because I believe everything is like a circle. It all goes around and around and around again. And it reaches a point. It doesn't reach a point. It's a circle. God is infinite. He doesn't end. So the thing is, no matter where you believe in, we will always go back to the source somehow. That's what I think. So concerning that scripture, I wish I could go back to that, but I don't remember. But it says a kingdom, so I figure maybe there's other kingdoms. There's other kingdoms that God created, and that could include the mythos that we know of. So yeah, that's one. And here, what else I wrote in my notes? Yeah, I basically said, like, the Bible is the base and the finish line, the beginning and the end. All the other mythos are the tiny details of other and creations, basically. So we're now moving on to when God created Adam and Eve. How Adam and Eve, I'm going to use Norse mythos again, because that's Norse. I love Norse mythos, because I love it. That's like second to the Bible. Second. Let's like, if I had to find myself in another universe, a dimension or whatever, I probably would be a Norse pagan or something. I probably could be, but here I'm not. But technically I am, because I'm Omnist, so I don't know. I'm Omnist. I accept and believe in all religions, but my baseline is folk Catholicism. But, that's could be kind of weird in itself. But when I looked into Genesis 2, chapter 2, when God created Adam and Eve, and the gods in the North, for example, created Asgard and Embla, technically God, well, this... All right, so this is difficult to talk about the sinful part. Like, sin, let's not get into the Christian concept of sin. Sin is just sin, whatever it is what it is in the Bible. So the purpose of it is no purpose. That's basically, sin means without God. If you look in Spanish, sin means without God. So no, sin means without, so in Spanish. So it's like basically something that is without him. And we cannot live without him. That's sin. So it's like that's like, we just can't, but I'm not gonna look into sin and like into the whole Christian concept of it. It is what it is, though. What I wrote, the sinful part and the punishment and the salvation of humankind is the tiny details of the human race. So I basically said, when God created Adam and Eve, and when we read the Bible, in the Norse mythos, us as humans, oh my goodness, it's coming to me. Okay, I have to say it. Us as humans at the time, when we try to interpret the world and understand who ruled us, who rules us now, the gods, right? The Norse, the Chinese, the everything mythos, they're all looked up at the gods. We were looking up. We were telling stories of the gods and the world. And the Bible itself, the Bible itself tells the stories of gods and the world, but it also says God is not selfish. The existence of God, the existence period, the uncreated, he's not selfish. Or she, which have you. He's not selfish. He has the Bible. He gave us the Bible, and he is God who tells the story of us as humans. So the Bible talks about everything, including humans, which is us. It tells the story of us. And that's how we learn about sin. And that's how we learn about which is right and wrong, or according to the Bible, which is moral and which is not moral, which is good and which which is not good. Like, we learn about being human through the Bible. But what I'm saying is that when we were exploring ourselves in the world before Jesus, the Word came down in flesh, before that happened, and God was just moving with the Jews, the Hebrews, I should say. Everyone was interpreting the gods. Everyone was looking up at the sky and telling stories of everything else around them. We were doing that, but we couldn't understand who we were. We couldn't understand who we are as humans. And God came, let's just say he came down, which he did, according to the Bible. He came down as the Word, the flesh, and he let us see ourselves through him. And we found ourselves through him. And when he goes back up, he let us have the Bible, which tells a story about humankind. He tells us the story about us. He thinks of us all the time, constantly, every day, every moment, every second. He watches us, watches over us all the time. And that's the funny part. When we moved down here, we had nothing but the gods because we didn't know ourselves, and the gods were there. But at the same time, the existence, the uncreated, said, look at yourself. Look at this. Look at me and see yourself. And we were able to see ourselves through God himself, through the uncreated. We couldn't see ourselves completely through the gods, or maybe we can. I don't know how that works. But for me, how I got found is I was able to see myself through the uncreated. And some people could see themselves through the gods in different way. But we wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for God himself. Like, he's the understanding. He is understanding, And we didn't have that. But we didn't have that completely. At the same time, we try to understand that based on the visible. Like St. Paul said, we can see the invisible through we can see the invisible through the visible. So we did our best to see God and to see the gods through the visible. And that's how we understood God and the gods and all of them together. That's how we understood God, period. Through the visible. But we could not see ourselves, which was funny. Like a mirror. We didn't have that spiritual mirror. So I see the Bible as like basically telling a story of humankind. What happened with the human race? Basically what happened down here and everywhere. Each moment God talks. His words reveals many things that we need and what we want to know. The Bible is everything, but also history, literally, of the human race and what happened to us, especially in this realm. Us being cast out and such is what happened to every human. So this is what I wrote. The fact that we got cast out, we don't hear that in other mythos about humans sinning and stuff like that. Because we're the ones looking at the gods. How can we know that? We're telling the stories of the gods. How can we tell a story of ourselves when we didn't create ourselves? So God said, let me tell you a story about two humans, about you. Let me tell you a story about how I created you. That's how uncreated start. That's how we start to learn, oh, this is where we came from. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to say it without being confusing. I don't want to be confusing. I don't want to be someone who's trying to convince someone. No, just understood. Like, I understand type. That's it. Like, just understood. Just clarify. Like, I want to give clarifications. That's it. I don't want to try to change people. Only people could change themselves. So the purpose of this talk is to share. I like to share what I've gathered. So whoever's watching, thank you so far. I'm almost done. Okay. Every human, this flood and all. So when we talk about the flood, in almost, I don't know, but in almost every creation myth, it talks about the flood. So that is reflected on all of us. So based on that, no matter where we at, the flood happened. So when God talked about his children, which is everyone, his creation and everybody, basically his children, he talks about how we were cast out. And this was not told in other creation myths because, like I said, we didn't understand ourselves. And so God lifted off that spiritual mirror and we are able to see this is what happened to humans while Odin and other gods were doing this. Because we talk about the stories about the gods. While they were doing this, what were humans doing? You know, what were the humans doing? What were we doing? Basically what I'm saying. What were we doing at the time while the gods were fighting and Ragnarok happened and all that stuff? And like, we have to, all of that stuff matters. So I believe the Bible itself tells a story about what happened while the gods was moving around, doing their thing, and creating, and thus creating forevermore, right now. You know? Because it basically tells about it talks about us. The Bible talks about us, what humans were doing. So it's like a mythos of everything. The Bible is everything, but it's kind of like, to me, solely the Bible, the human mythos, basically, if that makes sense. The human mythos, how humans are in certain ways. Instead of like Norse mythos about the gods, like Norse gods mythos and blah, blah, blah. It's talking about basically us as humans. Because I don't know any other Bible like the Bible itself that talks about how the humans were doing during the time in whatever culture. I don't really know. But I'm going to have to keep searching. So that's a tidbit. Yeah. I don't know, but if you have an idea, understand what's going on, oh my goodness, please comment down below. And if you like the video, please like the video. And if you like the channel, like what this channel brings, please subscribe. And thank you so much.